town expenses, the highway department. You start looking at all of it, combined with the general character of our commercial buildings in the town of Palatine. I'm seeing type 2 hay barns in 15 or 20 minutes, it's over. I don't care what size ponds you have or where they're located. The other thing I see in the town of Palatine, as well as across New York State, is modern housing. Modern insulated walls take a long time to burn, and we have mostly partials. And you know, mutual aid works real good. And where you put the water is just as expensive as the quantity of water that you have. I'm glad to have the discussion. The hydrants in commercial water systems for that other municipalities own, there also is a huge amount of trouble. To make a drastic point in that area, the water sources in this community are generally higher up in Fulton County. The water flows downhill, goes through the Mohawk Valley, and on the end of the run is large commercial buildings, complicated. And when they burn, fire departments don't ask, well, can I open 4 or 5 hydrants? They open 4 or 5 hydrants. And you know, if you put a hydrant in the supply line of one of those well-engineered commercial fire water supplies, you can collapse pipes or end up with a dribble on the other end when the school's burning. They are tightly engineered. Somebody told the village of Canajoharie what size silo to put up there. They not only told them how high to put it, they told them how big around. And that was engineered as a result of what was downstream. It's a complicated process. If the town of Palatine wishes to continue with that, the first thing I have to insist on is just a general letter from any one of these municipal water carriers to the extent that they will hold the town of Palatine harmless for hooking on their system. And if some official from one of these towns wants to give us that, then I would have to return that and ask them to have it engineered to figure out how big the line is and how much we can leave it open and how many of them we can leave open. It's a complicated thing. It's not as simple as it looks. And some of those pipes are quite old now. You create suction on the upper end of that, and you're liable to collapse the pipe. It's just too complicated for this small municipality to try to handle. And the other thing that I would like to see looked at, there's 931 townships in New York State. Show me 10 or 15 towns that are doing it now. I'm conservative. I don't want to break brand new ground with a fire protection system. We've been fighting fires since the early 1800s, and a lot smarter guys than me have addressed it and backed off in that area. The trucks these days are faster. They go over the road faster and carry a pretty good quantity of water. And to try to help our residents, the first thing I can see, we are a small municipality. We are not complicated. We don't have fire protection. We don't have curbing. We don't have a sewer system. And we don't have a police department. Those 4 things involved in very cheap municipal liability insurance. Fire pond. Ask an attorney what a fire pond is, and he will tell you it's an attractive nuisance. And you know, an attractive nuisance has a price on our general liability coverage. I would estimate 4 or 5 fire ponds will cost you more than $5,000 or $6,000 a year in liability insurance. The other thing is, I don't like funding the highway department much more than we have to right now. And if you're going to maintain fire ponds, you're going to have tall fences and you're going to have lawns. You're gonna have another whole round of equipment in the highway department to do the maintenance, and you're gonna have another man on the payroll. We have to weigh the costs and the reward. I spouted off enough about fire business, I guess. What I would like to see in the future is perhaps a citizens committee to look at possibilities, where we can go and what we can do in conjunction with some of these firemen, to maybe make rural town of Palatine a little safer, without us biting the bullet in trying to build ponds. There are ponds in some areas, and there are private people who will say, well, okay, we'll let you do that. And you know, with a proper contract written up by our attorney, I think it's doable. I think it's very doable. You know, the idea of parking an old truck with a tank full of water, you know, I don't have a problem with that. There are positive things we can do there. I mean, it's not altogether a bad idea. But it needs discussion, and it needs the proper parties at the table. It needs more than just the board, or more than just a citizens committee. I would like to see the firemen involved too.
Two right there.
Yeah, more, if everybody's all right with adding a little time, I don't mind the public discussion. I know it's almost a no-no for a board these days to take questions from the public and answer them right away. But I'll survive, I guess, another evening. Yes.
Some 50 years ago, I was town historian, and this flag thing came up. Willard Green was our highway commissioner, and one day he came to me and he said, you know, I want to tell you about something that's wrong. Down in the Fry Cemetery, there's one old guy on there that hasn't got a flag, an American flag on it. He said, will you ride down there and I'll point it out? And I said, yes. He pointed to the grave of Philip Fry, who was on the British side during the Revolution.
Yes.
I'd like to kind of extend the comments on the fire protection. And I just want to relate to a fire that was on, I believe it was Halloween on Brower Road. And if it hadn't been for the neighbor's pond and the accessibility for the neighbor's pond, the house was gone, there's no question. There's no argument there. My house burned in an hour and a half, actually less. But without the fire, if the fire company hadn't been there, I would have lost the shop, which would probably would have multiplied it. I would have lost my barn. Same thing was with the Brower Road house that burned this past fall. The fire company extinguished the house. There was nothing left to extinguish, but the barn still stands.
Yeah.
The point of the fire pond, the neighbor's pond was perfectly accessible. In January, if the same thing had happened, it wouldn't have been any good. Because the fire pond needs more, and some people don't understand what a dry hydrant is. You need what they call a dry hydrant. I know there's people sitting at this table right now, and I'm looking at a couple of them, that don't have any idea what a dry hydrant is. Now, the question of liability, I'll ask Mr. Cotton. How much does he freight to pay for their Rod and Gun Club puppy?
How much do they pay for it?
Liability.
I have no clue.
Obviously, if it's not your member,
I'm a member, but I have no clue on what they pay for liability on it.
but
I'm not
and
privy to that.
Ephrata, if I'm not correct, if I'm incorrect, correct me. They have 3 fire ponds at present, and they're planning a 4th one. That was told to me by Mr. Telfer.
Oh, yeah, I don't even know that one either. I
And
know.
they count your pond as one of their fire protection
Oh,
ponds.
do they?
Yes,
Yes,
Okay.
they do. And I talked to Mr. Telfer on that one also. So again, the cost of a pond, I've researched this. The other thing, the question was raised, I brought a full-size map in with locations. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not, Mr. McLaughlin.
I know you've done a lot of work on it.
Well, I did. I
and
brought a map in
respect
of
that.
locations where these different places are. This has all been done. We don't have to do it over again.
I would
but-
appreciate your volunteering for a citizens committee
Yeah.
and continue the work.
Yeah, but my point is, the cost of a pond, now the other one is the issue, I was told this right in the very beginning, that the soil at our town garage is not the best for a town. And I was also reminded of that by one of our council people by a letter that should never have been read at the meeting. I also ran into Mr., the guy down in the soil conservation there.
Ray Nellis.
Anyway, soil conservation down from Fultonville or Randall. We could either line it with clay or line it with plastic. I ran into a plastic lining company just the other day at a show. It would cost $1.50 a square foot to line that pond that we would build up there. Your total cost would probably, it would be a one-time shot. It's not like you're gonna spend $30,000 every year. As far as mowing, Mr. Logan already accepted the responsibility of clipping. If we do have to fence, he did. Didn't you, Art? Didn't you accept the responsibility of mowing the?
I said we mow the field now, that's all I
Yeah,
ever said.
same thing. You actually have less because you don't mow water. So the point is, I think sometimes you have a tendency to over-exaggerate. The other one is, okay, the town owning the pond, okay, I can't argue that one. The point is where that pond location is, it's just like spokes on a wheel. The remark is said about, well, we don't go back and forth, we make round trips. There's a lot of round trips you can't make west of Route 10 because the road ends up
Okay.
down on Route 5.
I
So
don't
therefore, with all those things in mind, I still think it's a good idea to do further research. I say I've already talked to 4 pond builders. I did not talk any money. We also talked about digging test holes to see what we have up there. But it be either, irregardless, we have the ability to put the dry hydrant in. The other one is, I don't think I ever got it on the map. I think it'd be a very viable to put a dry hydrant on old Route 5 up by the old mill inn.
I don't believe any further discussion on fire ponds
Okay.
or hydrants is called for.
Okay,
I have
fine.
agreed, and I think there's a majority on the board who feel that we should go ahead with a citizens committee
Okay,
and
thank
look
you.
into this further.
Thank you.
Details tonight, I don't think would be too productive for us.
All right.
Is there anybody else have any discussion?
I
Yes.
don't have a discussion, I have a question. If I want to go on a website to find out who are on the board, members of the board, or other information about the town, where do I go? Because it still
Okay.
is Sarah Nicole.
Right now, if you Google the town of Palatine, you got 2 websites, and one of them is out of date, the other one is the county's.
Right,
We will be building a website, give it a month or a month and a half,
okay.
and the information will all be there, along with the ability to communicate between the people
Thank
on
you
the
very
website.
much.
That's in Mr. Beckett's Ballywag, and the other people from Canada Lake Computer. My daughter will probably be building a website for nothing. That's what that's gonna amount to.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
I second. Oh, yeah, close public comment.
Oh, make a motion to close public comment.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to
I
adjourn.
Second. No comment.
Aye.
Aye.
It's down.